As someone who definitely takes the time to call out creative genius when it occurs by the elite players of our game, we must also take the time to give criticism when it's due, when one of the best players in the world utterly denies and neglects chess principles to create a very, very poor setup for himself. That was the case as you look at the game in front of you by Bador Jabava, the Georgian Grandmaster, broke many chess principles against his opponent from India, Grandmaster Ganguly, bounces back after a loss to Magnus Carlsen, and finishes this one off nicely. Before we dive into all the questions that you must be having, like how in the world did we get this type of setup for Black? Was this Fischer random chess? No, that's coming up in Oslo at the end of the month. Indeed, there's a lot to explaining to do, and we'll back up and show how Jabava created this setup. But first, let's see the critical moment where Ganguly finishes things off with the very, very nice combination knight d takes e4. When you have two very well-coordinated rooks primed for action here in the best real estate on the board in the center, and you have a d-pawn wanting to jump into the fray, it makes sense that you can look for these types of moves, so that's an instructive takeaway that we can find tactics like this too. Knight d takes e4, as I said, was played, and after f takes e4, the move queen to a2 check. The key is that now that the rook on d1 has been opened, providing support to this d-pawn, it means that bishop to e6 can be met by d7. Again, wasn't possible as long as there was a knight on d2, which is why Ganguly played and found this very nice combination. Of course, Jabava is already lost here, but a few more moves were made. He took on d7. Note that something like bishop takes a2 is basically just a transposition. After we trade and recapture the bishop, the e4 pawn will fall. 3 pawns will likely be way too many for Jabava to justify in the endgame, especially given that he still has to figure out that knight on h8, and of course he'd be lost. So he took on d7, but after rook takes, bishop takes, king takes, yet again he threw in the towel because the e4 pawn is falling. The knight doesn't even really have a lot of help coming. Moves like knight g6 would just block the rook, the problems that Black had already created for himself. Rook takes e4 renews threats of f5 because now you don't have e7. So just an absolute mess for Jabava, and as such, like we said, he resigned. So what principles did he break? I analyzed this game pretty deeply in my blog over on Chess.com. You can follow it for more insights and analysis. But when knight d2 was played by Ganguly, a novelty here, but not really anything special. You'd think a very logical path might be a move like knight g6 in this sort of Caro-Kann structure. After bishop g3, bishop d6, Black is fine. We have a middle game that likely will be roughly equal. But instead, Jobava played the move f6, which I gave a dubious marking to because this is not a Veresov, right? Not a position where Black is just going to blow things open and get a mating attack on either the king side or the queen side successfully. So creating that type of potential weakness on the light squares and kind of slowing down your development made no sense. Fast forward a few moves to after White castled long, and here, for sure, Black's best opportunity is to play the move g6. Then I analyzed bishop g7, you get castled, and despite the fact that Black is worse, this has to be better in terms of classical principles. Yes, these pawns are weak, but Black still has the opportunity to maybe sack the b-pawn as he did in the game and strive to get some coordination where at least the rooks can operate together on the queen side. But instead, Jabava, almost like he had already made up his mind when he played f6 on move 7, played king f7. Even on the next move, after knight h3, he probably still could have played g6 and bishop g7. But the principles were coming off the rails. Sacrificing a pawn when your pieces are just not going to find optimal coordination, when you've kind of uncastled yourself by hand, just doesn't make a lot of sense. And after, as we said, a few more exchanges and eventually the critical position, we got to the moment here in front of you that we started from, where Ganguly put it away nicely. So chess principles being broken, a good lesson for all of us. Obviously, Jabava is a genius, and the guy is producing some of the most amazing attacking games that we have the luxury of watching. But in this case, obviously, something not quite right from start to finish, and he was, as we said, rightfully punished for playing the way he did. Make sure you check out the broadcast, or you will be rightfully punished. Just kidding, but make sure you do check it out. Anna Rudolph and Danny King are doing a great job, because we need to figure out, as we move into the back half of the Isle of Man, they're the FIDE Chess.com Grand Swiss, who's going to win this event and get that seat into the candidates. Only a few more rounds remain, and you're definitely going to want to check it out. Appreciate you watching this video regardless of where you are tuning in from. Give us a retweet, give us a share, give us a like. It really is appreciated for the work we're doing here, and I will see you around on Chess.com.